Hello and welcome to the Colts Cover-2 podcast. I'm Joel Erickson. I'm joined as always by Nate Atkins. It is very, very, very late, or very early, depending on how you look at it. On our way in, there were people already leaving for the airport um, for early flights. So very, very late. The Colts lose 21-13 to the Minnesota Vikings. Really, this game is going to be mostly about the offense, but we're just going to jump right into it. Nate, Colts lost today. Your villain of the game.
I think it has to be Shane Steichen. It's kind of shocking the number of times that we've made him the villain of the game this year. When we were just talking about, I think we made him this one time last year, and he was usually the hero of the game. But I don't know how to go in any other direction than this. Mostly because I feel like his process this week gave us no choice but to make him the villain of the game with the way that this went, where he makes a quarterback change midweek. He says it's all about, trying to get this team to the playoffs, that Joe Flacco gives them the best chance to win, that his experience and how much he's played matters a lot more than what Anthony Richardson can provide right now as a young player. And to be able to make that switch at quarterback, to sacrifice or at least induce the risk of what they're losing in the long term with Anthony Richardson, like this needed to look a certain way tonight. This needed to look like a better offense, at least an offense that looks like it could be competitive and get you to the playoffs. And it was everything but that. They basically scored 3 points on offense tonight because they had 7 points on a defensive score. They got 3 points on a field goal after a pick from Nick Cross, where they ran 3 plays, gained 2 yards, and kicked a field goal. So really, they had one field goal drive, and it ended up being the fewest points, fewest yards, fewest first downs, fewest red zone possessions, worst EPA per play game. Every metric you look at, it was the worst game they've had all year on offense. And so when you switch the quarterback because you say it's going to spark the offense, and it's all about the short term of going to a veteran to get us to the playoffs, and then the offense bombs the way that it does, it really moves the spotlight back to the guy who's been designing the offense for both of these quarterbacks. And I just thought, even though today had a better initial approach to playing the way I think they should play, where they came out running with Jonathan Taylor, they got the ball in his hands 6 of the first 7 plays, and they were really moving that first drive. So the initial script looked suitable. But as the game wore on and the Vikings really were able to take that run game away, which is partly because they don't have the mobile quarterback because of this change. Steichen was just not coming up really with any answers. If Josh Downs wasn't making a catch on third down, this offense really didn't have anything after that first drive. And I think the personnel management was not great with, again, taking Jonathan Taylor out in the fourth quarter, going to Trey Sermon, and that was before they needed to throw. It was a 4-point game. You run Trey Sermon, to set up a 3rd and 2 on a play that they got to the edge, and Trey Sermon just doesn't get anything more than 4 yards, sets up a 3rd and 2, and for 2 straight plays, they don't have Jonathan Taylor out on the field. They throw both of those plays when they don't have a go-to wide receiver, force it to Michael Pittman Jr. He comes out, they force it to his backup and Ashton Doolin. And it's like they're just living through plays right now, and they're going to a veteran that he trusts to more predictably run those plays. And they just ultimately look like a team that's playing through players not capable for the moment. And none of the plays are really all that impressive right now. So I think when you have the worst offensive showing of the season, when you make the quarterback change, it starts to make us think it's not about the rookie quarter or the young quarterback holding them back, that this is bigger than that. So today was, and this week in general, I just think the way that Shane handled it, everything else this week from, the decision to bench was one thing, but, doing that on Tuesday, letting players find out on social media, not announcing it in a team meeting. So players kind of discussed it just amongst themselves in positional meetings and in the cafeteria. Every player had a different guess, different reasoning, different reaction to the news. There wasn't really a team message behind it. Just a lot of confusion here, and including a quarterback in Anthony Richardson who said he didn't know why he was benched, that they had to call a separate meeting with him to talk through that. All to do that just to come out here and have the worst showing of the season. I mean, this is a low moment for Shane. This is about as low as I think he's had since he became a head coach.
I think offensively, it's probably the lowest he's been since becoming a coordinator.
Yeah, probably.
Because if you think back, last year was successful, even though people didn't expect it. The 2 years with the Eagles were good, and before that, they had Justin Herbert having one of the better rookie seasons a quarterback's had in a while. So, I think it's the first time in a while that he's really struggled to find answers on offense, and they just haven't been there. My villain of the game is we did this last week too. It's the inverse of last week. My villain of the game is Joe Flacco. He wasn't like 3 interceptions with a pick six awful. He wasn't very good though. 16 and 27, just 179 yards. I think they're at like 5.3 yards per drop back, something terrible like that. Only 2 explosive pass plays, one to Kylan Granson, one to A.D. Mitchell. And his interception came on a 3rd down in field goal territory. It's just a really bad decision throwing from one hash to the other sideline. We could see it from the press box. Me and Chris Hagan, who the anchor for Fox 59 and CBS 4, both said no at the same time when Flacco let go of the ball. Just a really bad pick there. There's another play. Shoot. Oh, you know what? This was a Steichen play. Sorry. Running it on 3rd and 19 to set up the first Matt Gay miss when pretty regularly in the NFL you drop back and you just complete like a short little 8-yarder and get a little closer. That was another bad Steichen play. So throw that in the previous field of the game. But just Joe Flacco looked like an old quarterback. When the Colts got him, they thought he would go down the field more. We've only really seen that in the Jaguars game, and that's the worst secondary in the league. For the most part, he's kind of been dink and dunk.
Yeah, this Joe Flacco, what he was supposed to offer tonight, I think the reason for this current timing was they're going on the road, loud environment. They're going to go up against a high blitzing team. So you have a veteran in there who's going to kind of operate this throw quickly. And that is throughout his career, what he's been able to handle. He can throw really quickly and avoid sacks that way. But there just isn't anything beyond that, really. He completed 16 of 27 passes, but it's not like they were pivoting to a player who was super efficient, super accurate. It's like he gets the ball out fast, but they're not sometimes he'll just throw it into these windows that are not it's asking the player to make a play. So when he's set up to where if you have really, really good receivers and playmakers who can win one-on-one, he'll get the ball out to avoid the sack and give them a chance and eventually build chemistry with them. And it currently just didn't really fit. And so he doesn't bring too much more beyond that. And a lot of tough plays. The pick was really brutal. It was like Josh Downs didn't even have a chance to come over and get that ball or make even a defensive play on it. And he does just seem like an old quarterback. And we knew that in terms of how he'd move around, but we just aren't seeing a lot of the velocity throws. And when you do see them, it's sort of like it's only in that intermediate gain, and it's not in a way that's like throwing guys open. It's not velocity out of the break so that they can, adjust to it before the defender knows it's coming. It's just thrown hard into some of these double covered areas. And so it just looks like a guy who's trying to force it without a lot of physical abilities. And that's kind of to me how he's looked. Like you said, outside of that Jaguars game, the Steelers game, he had very efficient numbers, but it was not down the field explosive. And the Titans game felt like a real struggle where, really the Jaguars and Titans games. He got 2 touchdowns on kind of these lofted jump balls, which is kind of like that's kind of how you would play if you're really just an old quarterback, just trying to give your guys any chance to make a play. And that's what it felt like. Is like someone's got to bail this out. That's not him. And the way that they pitched it, the way they ultimately bet on it was the opposite, that he was going to elevate everybody above this. He's going to be the star. And I don't think he physically has it at this stage at 39 years old to be the star.
That brings us to hero of the game. I think this might both come from the same position.
Yeah, so
I'll lead off. I'll go with DeForest Buckner. 6 tackles, 1 sack, 3 quarterback hits. Not always the fulcrum of the pass rush, but pretty much the guy who's always getting home and creating stuff. And just the hustle from him. I think one of the reasons the Vikings were successful in the second half was they did a better job of getting away from him and who I'm assuming is going to be your hero of the game. But the last 2 weeks has been a reminder that DeForest Buckner is still DeForest Buckner, and that's very good for this defense.
Yeah, he's an absolute monster. I thought he was so key early on, getting in the face of Sam Darnold and forcing some of these pressure panic moves, whether it was throws into coverage or when he would turn his back to the defense, and that you're just dead to rights against DeForest Buckner. In most cases, most quarterbacks have no shot against that. So he was wrecking things, and so is my hero of the game is Grover Stewart. Grover, I thought, just kind of annihilated this interior of the Vikings defensive line. You saw that on run plays where for some reason Vikings came out running up the middle, and that just didn't do anything. But you really saw it a new way from Grover today in the pass rush, where he was so vicious, just kind of running those guards over, that he was able to get right in the face of Sam Darnold, who seemed so surprised by that it would lead to disaster. So he had 2 sacks since the first time Grover Stewart's ever had a 2-sack game. And he also had the strip sack that let Kenny Moore pick the ball up and return it for a touchdown, which was the best moment that the Colts had in this game. It gave them a 7-0 lead. They took a 7-0 lead to halftime, and it was like, if they could do anything on offense, they could have had a double-digit lead, and then maybe that's where they can lean on Jonathan Taylor and try to survive this. So the reason they were in this game was Grover Stewart. If he doesn't have that strip sack, they lose 21-6. They only managed 6 other points, and so this was Grover's best game, and it was just like, it's weird. It's as the game went on, that was kind of all the Colts really had, was that 2 dominant players in the interior of their defensive line for the most part. There are a couple other defensive players who I thought played fairly well, but the big plays, the high level play, that all came from those 2 guys in the middle.
Unsung villain of the game. Your unsung villain of the game in a game where the villains were very, very obvious.
Yeah, they were. I guess I'm going to go with Gus Bradley on this one. So
Dang it. That's where I was heading.
Yeah,
I'll go elsewhere, but
okay. Well, you shouldn't have given me the first choice. That's how that goes.
Yeah, I know.
But anyway, overall, it wasn't like the defense did their part to give them a chance, play on the road, pretty good offense. But I thought this was more about defensive players making plays, namely those 2 guys wrecking it in the middle, linebackers wrecking some run plays. But just some of the scheme decisions for Gus Bradley were questionable. I thought he could have mixed the blitz in a little bit better as the game wore on. But the main thing that was troubling to me was how much cover 3 he ran. Safety in the middle of the field just made it really not a good situation to try to hold down Justin Jefferson, who can just kind of live along the sidelines. And they were giving him so much space on sort of these kind of deep digs and kind of routes settling down, comeback routes. But then eventually he got moved on to a one-on-one matchup with Samuel Womack, and Samuel Womack's game is physicality, but like he isn't going to hold up one-on-one with Justin Jefferson down the field with no safety help. And they were flirting with that at the end of the first half. They did it again in the second half. That's when he had that explosive gain, biggest play of the game on either side. Justin Jefferson's going to get his against some teams, but it's just like he was just open every single play. Ends up having 7 catches for 137 yards, I think is what he finished with. And just there's some other moments there that just felt too leaky in coverage. Some of it's linebackers weren't maybe covering as well as they could have, but that touchdown at the end was a miscommunication where Jalen Jones seemed convinced that he could pass off that tight end route to Nick Cross, and Nick Cross doesn't go over there at all, and they're just both pointing at each other, and it's like that was something they couldn't really afford. Is that they physically it's hard to match up with these guys, but to not communicate and pass that off in that moment was tough too. So the thing between playing kind of a defense that was not going to be aggressive in coverage, but then also not being assignment football in coverage, just felt like they could have, scheme and adjustments on that side of the ball. They didn't exactly help them out either.
Yeah. I think the somewhat silly answer here would be Michael Pittman's back. Not all of Michael Pittman, just the part of his back that hurts. But I think I'm going to go Jones and Womack. Colts only had 2 passes defended. Darnold was 29 of 35. Some of that is the coverage, but also some of it is just you guys got to get your hands on the football. Sam Womack's kind of fallen off a little bit since he first started out. In terms of the last 2 weeks, he's been a little bit rougher. Now, we kind of telegraphed that a little bit because the level of play was going up from their opponents, but they needed those guys to be better, get their hands on a few more footballs to have a chance at like a really dominant performance. I think part of this is going to be part of what's going on with the defense in this game is that like the offense has to do its part, and I'll get to that in a future category. But yeah, I think that's where I'm going to go for unsung villain of the game, unsung hero of the game. Man,
I'll go with one.
I'm going to go Zaire Franklin.
Okay.
I'm going to go Zaire Franklin. I think the Vikings still rush for a lot of yards. And I'm sure there's probably plays on there in coverage, especially where he doesn't look that great. But we saw a little bit more of a return to. They had 133 yards. It's 4.2 per carry. It's not like a great yards per carry for the Vikings. And Aaron Jones was only 3.0. That's pretty good. It did better with Cam Akers as a change of pace. But I felt like there were more plays from Franklin today that were made at the line of scrimmage, like playing downhill. In addition to like the interception, which, yes, Sam Darnold threw it right to him, but how many times do we see someone throw the ball right to a defender and then they just don't catch it? So I'll throw Zaire Franklin in there. That stop in the red zone was a big part of the reason why they got into the half scoreless.
I thought the edge that he kind of brought early on, some of the physical stops, just slamming guys down. That's what stopped a lot of the bleeding when it seemed like the Vikings were getting a drive going. That's a lot of what forced them to drop back, and that's when the disaster kind of came to Sam Darnold early in the game, which is ultimately the reason that they were able to have a lead and have a chance in this game. For my unsung hero, I'm going to go with Josh Downs. Josh Downs kind of felt like all the Colts had to bank on in this game on offense as the game wore on, second half of the game. Alec Pierce had 3 catches for 41, so that would have been the other one. But I thought Downs, with Michael Pittman Jr. in the state that he's in, where he can only catch 1 pass a game right now, someone had to do something here. And Josh Downs was that guy. He's been that guy for the most part since he came back from injury. But he had 6 catches for 60 yards. 9 targets. Of course, one of those targets was that pick that wasn't his fault really at all. That was just a bad read and didn't have a chance on the ball. But he's just been efficient. He's felt like when they'd pull out some of these 3rd and longs. They only had 13 first downs in the game, but it just felt like when they would pull one of these out, it was him going up for a ball or coming across the middle, deep in the intermediate zones for the ball. And I don't know, looking back, I think they should have gone to him on that fourth down play. Michael Pittman Jr. is out of the game. Jonathan Taylor's out of the game. I know he's not – Josh Downs isn't necessarily your – if it's going to be press man coverage and it lead into a safety, if that's what you think you're going to get, he's a harder player to maybe play that way, but still don't think you should force a skill set. He's got with Ashton Doolin, Josh Downs has the route running, the ability to see his matchup pre-snap, the feel and the hands and the ability to leave his feet and make a play. And he's got to be this guy they go to a little bit more as a primary read when they don't have these other guys available and on the field, because right now in this offense as a whole at the moment, it's hard to fall in love with anything on an individual level that feels consistent. And I think Josh Downs is the one consistent player they have at the moment.
Yeah, especially with Flacco at quarterback for however long that is. The answer is right now, yes. Shane second then.
Right now, yes.
That brings us to number of the day. Number of the day is going to be fun today. You could go in a lot of different directions. My number of the day is 36:54. That's 36 minutes and 54 seconds. That's how much time the Vikings had the football. That's a lot. It's over 60% of the time in the game the Vikings had the ball. Listen, this defense is not a shutdown defense. They have to win in other ways. They did it for a half. And I think they just wore down. Like, Justin Jefferson's going to make his plays, but I think they just wore down. And they've worn down a lot this season. I think for the season – oh, goody, I have it up. For the season, their time of possession so far, their average time of possession opponents is 34 minutes and 18 seconds, which means Colts are only possessing it for 25 minutes and 42 seconds per game. You're just putting a ton on the defense, and on a defense that really can't bear it. So, like, the weaknesses they have on that side of the ball are being exacerbated by how much other teams have the ball.
Yeah, it's kind of crazy because, like, early in the year, it felt like their defense was just they're on the field so much because of their own fault. They were not stopping the run. They couldn't get teams off the field. They couldn't get them into pass rush situations. And now it's sort of like they're pretty good at getting teams off the field, including getting some turnovers of their own. It's just like they're not going to be able to carry this because their secondary just doesn't make enough plays for that to happen. It's too vulnerable in this situation where this passing league, especially with what they're going to go up here against here soon. So my number of the day is minus 0.35, which is the Colts EPA per play today. I'm not normally huge into this stat. I think it gets a little noisy, but for reference, that number is their worst of the season and their worst since the very first game Shane Steichen coached in Indianapolis. So we're going back to the very first game for him, which, if you remember, Anthony Richardson's first start was against the Jacksonville Jaguars. And the reason that game was such a crazy slog was that was when they didn't have Jonathan Taylor or Zach Moss. They were running with Deion Jackson and Evan Hull and basically were at like a yard a play in that. So, like, that was like you had the all-time worst run game and a rookie quarterback. And I think they scored like 16 points or something like that. So this was worse than this is just about as bad as that. Negative EPA per play means pretty much you're setting yourself back. You'd be better like not running a play, basically, is where they were at. That's a mix of the turnover with just how inefficient they were. And the kind of best, I think, kind of baked everything into one about just how little they produced today, where bonus number of the day is they only ran 4 plays that were not field goals inside the Vikings 30-yard line.
Seems bad.
It's not what you want. And none of those were scoring plays. So it's not like they got there, they went 29 yards to the end zone. They never got further than just inside the 30. So, yeah, not a day where they exactly moved the ball or did much.
They're the furthest they got. That you got me thinking there. The furthest they got, according to the possession sheet, they might have like gotten further than this and gotten pulled out. But in terms of where their drives ended, the closest they got to Minnesota's end zone was the 23-yard line.
Yeah.
There's another bonus number of the day. That's not a good one. That brings us to the interlude, some of the fun stuff, game day observation, and then our dueling. 3 things. My game day observation, I think it's always the same when we come to Minnesota. That stadium's gorgeous. It looks so good from the outside. Like I saw a shot. We're obviously sitting inside, but I saw a shot from NBC of above our heads of it panned out with the light coming out of the windows. It looks great from the outside and above. On the inside, I swear it looks like a painting, especially when the sun's coming through. It wasn't doing that tonight, but it's just a really good looking stadium. They really the architect there just deserves so much credit. That's my game day observation. Every time we come to Minnesota, I'm like, man, that the way this stadium looks is incredible.
Yeah, to just build off that, I think the return on investment they're getting from their fan base is pretty incredible. I was out today. It's a night game, so we had some time to do some things. So I was out, just before noon today, and I mean the streets are packed, and people are in their jerseys, and it just was sort of like this all day buildup. And then as we're driving there, you drive by all these sort of these different bars and restaurants where it was like they were flooding out of that, just getting ready for this game. And it's like that's ultimately what you want when you do build a stadium like that is so state of the art and so so much money pumped into that. You want to be able to have this return on the investment for the team that you put on the field, and then the buy-in from the fans. And I know it's a Colts podcast, but it's like that's eventually what you hope. I think you should hope that the Colts eventually get that way. Obviously, they don't have talks of a new stadium, but as far as like you've got a downtown stadium, and just you want to be able to have that product on the field that's exciting, and then a fan base that just like wants to build up all day for the game. That's the kind of buzz that's sort of missing in Indy, and I don't blame anyone for it. It sort of goes to everything else we're talking about here with this quarterback carousel and how they haven't achieved things yet or in recent times. So I thought today was a good showcase for a team that's on Sunday Night Football, the primetime showcase, and they kind of showed out.
The Skol chant freaks me out, though. Apparently it means cheers. But the way they say it sounds like, I don't know, like a medieval army coming to kill you. I don't like it.
I think that's probably the goal.
It sounds very culty. Very Texas A&M-y to me. Whoops. Accidental shot at Texas A&M. 3 football things that gave me joy. 3 football things that left Nate terribly vexed. 3 football things that gave me joy. Number 1, Grover Stewart absolutely pancaking Garrett Bradbury on the way to the quarterback. I went back and watched it like 5 times during the game. He just he turned him to mush. I don't know, like it wasn't even like it almost wasn't even a pancake because he didn't like run right over him. It's like he hit him and Bradbury just disintegrated, and then he just ran past him. It's like a lineman's dream to beat a guy that bad.
Yeah, I'm going to use the same play for my first football thing that left me terribly vexed. And normally these are like vexings are like there's some kind of like I'm bothered by it or I'm not that. I'm just very surprised that they picked up the flag that they initially threw on kind of a face mask. I guess it was going to be a face mask call on Sam Darnold. I know as Chris Hagan pointed out on press row, you cannot get a horse collar in the pocket call, so that wasn't an option, but it did feel like usually that when it's that kind of a hit to the head on a quarterback, they usually find some kind of call, whether it was face mask or some kind of a roughing call. I mean, he was dropping back to pass tonight. He wasn't as a runner. I don't have a problem with them not doing that. I just usually that very rarely do they make a call like that on a defensive lineman to the head of a quarterback and then decide to pick it back up. But I don't know, maybe when maybe when it was that cool and they realized how badly he destroyed the lineman in front of him and how Kenny Moore cashed in, maybe they thought it was just, hey, we'll let you have this one because this is really impressive, what you did with it.
I'm not convinced he hit him in the head, but I haven't looked at it super closely. It was up around that. It was up around that area, but I think his arm kind of like ended up underneath him. Plus, they had the replay assist, which is like a bonus football thing that gives me joy. They should do that all the time.
Yeah,
there's no delay. It's just like all of a sudden, like 2 seconds into the play clock, the ref's like, replay assist has changed it. Like, why can't all replays be that good? I don't know.
True.
Maybe they will. Maybe they're going to get there eventually. Somebody said, I think Hagan said it was they're only doing it for primetime games. I did not realize that. Number 2 football thing that gave me joy. This was a tough game for football things that give me joy. But there was a play that the Vikings ran. They did one of the 2 option screens where there's a guy on either side that quarterback can throw the ball to. I like those, but that's not the football thing that gave me joy. The football thing that gave me joy is Grant Stewart beating the block of the lineman and dropping the guy immediately for a loss. Those plays, when you have as a linebacker, when they get the free shot, that is not an easy play to make count, and he made it count. So shout out to Grant Stewart for making a one-on-one play by beating the lineman and then getting the screen.
Yeah, that was a cool play. Cool play for sure. I think here, football thing that left me terribly vexed is in the first half, the Vikings got a stop. There was like 2:30 left on the clock, and Vikings just didn't take a timeout. They just drained it down to the 2-minute warning. They had 2 timeouts to use. I don't ever really understand that when it's like Colts were not in any position to go for it. I think it would have been 4th and like 18 or something. It was 4th and 10 or more. They just kind of let that go away, and it felt in the moment like that wasn't going to hurt them. But they ended up not scoring at the end of that half when they doinked it off the upright. And if they have a little bit more time to gather themselves, maybe that's not how that goes. So when you have timeouts, use the timeouts to help your team.
Number 3 football thing that gave me joy. There was a play. The Vikings got down by the goal line. I guess they probably scored on this drive. I don't remember it. Yeah, they did. Yeah, that's not fun. But they tried to do something in the middle, tried to go east-west, and Dayo Dengbo blew through the line, and like he didn't make the tackle, but the fact that he blew through the line led to EJ Speed making a tackle for a 5-yard loss. And Dengbo celebrated like he made the tackle himself, and he should have. He's the one who created that play. He didn't get the tackle, but like he's the one who blew everything up and got Jones going all over the place, and set it up. So love it when a defensive lineman makes a play like that and realizes how big it was, even though he doesn't get the tackle.
Yeah, that was a sweet play. Dio's been messing a lot of plays up lately. They've needed it badly. Last football thing that left me terribly vexed, since I like to make at least one of these about a play call. To me, 4th quarters are the time to play your players and go through your players. And barely playing Jonathan Taylor in the 4th quarter, again, we got to learn the lesson from that, Shane. I did that against the Packers. We know how that went. And this did involve the speed option, thank God, but it still did not go super well. Yeah, again, Trey Sermon's in the game. It doesn't force the defense to react to the backfield on 3rd and 2 and 4th and 2. They're able to just play the pass. They're able to put 2 guys on Michael Pittman Jr. to flip a safety over to the in-breaking slant route to Ashton Doolin. I don't think that is what they should do. They could have run 2 times there with him. And then just there's a play where Trey Sermon got the edge and got a 4-yard gain. I like to think if Jonathan Taylor was in the game at that moment, that 4-yard gain, could be a first down, could be, who knows, maybe that was the one explosive game they needed. They didn't have a run of longer than 13, but you got to get to more than 13 carries for Jonathan Taylor to get there. So just another moment of, I felt like early in the game he was going to him. He was living through him. And I know in that middle portion it wasn't working, but it's like you got to go down with their best players in the fourth quarter. You're making this way too hard if a 39-year-old quarterback is going to play with backup running backs, and it was tough when Taylor was hurt, but now he's healthy, he's not out there. That's one of the biggest things I think Shane Steichen's got to correct is the personnel uses in the fourth quarter.
That's been the interlude piece. Now we get into the main categories, the ones that kind of have a little bit more. We get too much blame and too little blame since Colts lost today. I'm going to go with too much blame to start. Too much blame. Who's getting too much blame for tonight's loss?
I guess this is going to come off weird, but I'm going to say Joe Flacco, and purely because, I mean, he's 39 years old, so I think the expectations, and not the fans' expectations, the team's expectations were off, in the fact that he does not have, like, there's this hope. It's really hope and not a plan at this point. Hope that he could recreate this run that he had with the Browns last year, and it's sort of like it feels like he's just fallen short to not play the way he did last year. But he did that last year when he had Amari Cooper and David Njoku. And if you look at how he produced, like those two, based on the games he played with them, Amari Cooper was at a 2,000-yard pace if you put it over 17 games, and David Njoku was at a 1,300-yard pace. Like, that's just two guys just dominating out there. And the Colts do not have targets who can dominate that way. And so Joe Flacco's kind of asked to solve these things without those players. And it's just not going to work that way. So to me, it was like Joe Flacco didn't, I mean, he wants to play, no question. He wants to be out there, but it isn't his fault that like the offense was at a point where they had to do a desperate quarterback change in order to inspire something that otherwise wasn't there. It's like he's being asked to fix a problem that is so much bigger than him, so much bigger than Anthony Richardson, bigger than the quarterback position. So he didn't play well at all, but he was not, between the offensive line, which held up better than I would have guessed, but still they're not like going to dominate right now. The offensive line, the lack of use for Taylor, Michael Pittman Jr.'s back, and just the overall lack of targets at tight end and running back, which, by the way, bonus number of the day, only one target to tight ends in the entire game. It was one catch for 22 yards for Kylen Granson. Like, that's the opposite of the model he had last year with David Njoku. So if you're going to ask Joe Flacco to do this late career, thing where he's going to throw a lot in a game and really carry you, got to have a lot of big-time weapons, and he didn't have that around him right now. So he's not really built physically to win in any other way.
I just saw the Grover hit again. He definitely got a hand in the face mask. He didn't grab it, but he did bonk it. Yeah. It's the kind of play that they probably should pick up, but they don't. Let's put that.
That's
my too much blame is the defense. They did give up more than 400 yards. I know that's bad, but realistically, for what this defense is, with what Chris Ballard gave them in the secondary, they gave them a chance. They gave the Colts a chance to win. I don't know. I think they got a chance to win, and they gave them a chance to win and made enough plays to give the Colts a chance to get in the game. And the Colts offense never got in the game. Too little blame. Who's getting too little blame for this game?
I think I'm going to go with. I guess I'll go with Chris Ballard, just because if the model was to, it was a Shane Steichen decision, the way they're pitching, to move from Anthony Richardson to Joe Flacco, but you have to have sign off from other people. So it all kind of falls on all of them. Jim Irsay's included in that. Steichen would not be making this move if either one of those said absolutely not. So if they're open-minded to the idea of going to Flacco for, this late season push, and it's all about make the playoffs, this team's got a lot to play for, that should have been an off-season conversation about using resources and adding players and at least addressing some of the needs. And so tonight, when you go out there and, I mean, there's very little to throw to at running back. And like I said, one catch, one target for a tight end. That just, I don't know very many pocket old veteran quarterbacks who are going to succeed with nobody to throw to at running back and tight end. That's kind of asking too much as far as them to hold the ball and create down the field when arm strength is a struggle. It gets to be more of a struggle as you get older. So, it was Shane Steichen's decision to go to Joe Flacco, but the roster's not built for it. And the window to win isn't built for it the way that I think they're trying to pass off right now. So I just think they're all kind of involved in this at the moment when this is going as poorly as it is. And so that includes the head coach, which we went out in the beginning. And I think the front office deserves to wear a little bit of that too.
My too little blame is going to be the offensive line. They did a decent job with the blitzes, but like they couldn't get any push in the middle against the Vikings defense. Couldn't keep up what's going in the run game. I just think that they can play a little bit better if they really want to be considered. Now, they had Matt Gonzalez, they have Dalton Tucker. There's some pieces there. Also, the line has struggled in the screen game. They're not getting blocks a lot. They're, like I said, they're playing two rookies. They're a little bit down from what they normally are, but they got to wear a little bit of this offensive performance too. So we'll throw the offensive line on there. That brings us to the last two categories: one to throw away and one to go on. One to throw away, one thing to throw away. This is a very dangerous category now. So we threw away something over and over again, and then they did it. So one thing people are talking about from this game that we're not going to be talking about the rest of the season.
Well, I'm just going to play off what you just said. I'm going to say that one to throw away is acting like we have any idea what's going to happen at quarterback. So when Shane Steichen says Joe Flacco's our quarterback for now, I'm taking that to be the most literal interpretation that was true at whatever that was, 11:37 p.m. Central Time in Minneapolis, Minnesota.
That sounds like one to go on.
It could be.
That sounds like one to go on. There are no absolutes.
Yeah, there are no absolutes. It can change at any moment because, like, this could just change on a dime right now. I wouldn't think that they'll do anything this next week because I feel like they're going to chalk this up to, hey, it was one bad game. We're going to get back at home and we'll get right back on it. But if they fall to 4-6, who knows? Especially the run game, if they can't run the ball, and that's kind of how the team is built. I mean, who knows? And then who knows at what point they get to where the season's not going the way that they want it to, and it becomes more about, hey, we got to play for the future. I don't know how it's going to go. I just think when the one thing, they don't tell us a lot of what they're going to do very often, but the one thing they always said they were going to do is play Anthony Richardson through the struggles, through the development. They said it through their moves that this year was not about going for it, contending, and then they pulled that rug from underneath us, and it surprised the quarterback, it surprised the whole roster, and it obviously surprised all of us. I don't rule out anything anymore. Like I feel like every single week we did this where I said one to throw away was the idea that they'll change the quarterback, and then they did it. So the one to go on is that there are no absolutes, that any of this can get ripped up in a heartbeat.
I figured out what you just did there. For the first time ever, you combine the two categories into one answer.
Here we go.
Your one to throw away is anything they've said about the quarterback position. And your one to go on is that we don't know what to expect at the quarterback position.
Uncertainty will go on.
That's very nifty.
I didn't even know I was doing that. So
that's what happens when it's 3:00 in the morning Central Time.
That's exactly it.
One to throw away for me is, like, I know everybody wants to get rid of Matt Gay. I don't think we're there yet just because of his money. He's at 82%. It's not good enough. He's missed 3 50-yard field goals. But I think the fact that he hasn't missed anything shorter than that, I'm just guessing. I'm guessing based on the way they handled Vinatieri mostly. And honestly, the way they held on to Blankenship too long. So, like, he's at 82% for the year. It's not great. He made another 54-yarder. Plus, he's got all these guarantees, and he's got an out at his contract at the end of the year. I know everybody hates Matt Gay. I don't foresee the Colts deciding to make a move there unless things really, really get bad.
Yeah, for them, like you
I
said,
don't think he's one miss away.
No, he's going to have to start really being unreliable in that under 45 range, because that's the only time when it feels like you could go get something else to do the job that he's not doing. But when it's missing, 50 plus yarders, you're disappointed because you went out and paid a player more than anyone had in free agency to hit those kicks. But it doesn't mean that there's someone else you can just go sign, because that's the hard thing about kicker, especially this time of year, is like the alternatives are so uninspiring that they could make the change, but to have faith in that person to actually make those kicks and actually draw them up and not go for it, that's where I don't think they're going to mess this up until, like you said, it starts to become an issue where they're missing more than just long kicks.
My one to go on is that I don't know that we're going to see the Joe Flacco deep arm.
Yeah.
It just seems like with Pittman hurting, A.D. Mitchell struggling, like teams can focus on Pierce more than the Colts would like. And while I think Pierce is very, very good at getting deep, like I just haven't seen it from Flacco yet, where he's throwing the kind of I shouldn't say I haven't seen it yet. He did it once against Jacksonville with a deep ball. But like there's a ball you have to throw to Pierce where it's way out in front of him and give him a chance to either go get it or time his leap. And it just hasn't happened enough. And so I think Flacco is probably closer to like the 6.6 yards per attempt guy that he's been with the Colts, and not as close to what was he with Cleveland last year?
7.9.
Yeah, I don't think he's very close to the 7.9 guy. So that's not great.
Well, that's where it's like if he doesn't have that ability to throw the deep ball, there's not a lot to go on at the moment, because the run game isn't going to be as good without the quarterback run threat. And they don't have the same intermediate targets that they thought they would, or that you need if Pittman's not right, tight ends aren't doing it. It's less of Pierce's game. It's kind of the tricky spot they get in if like he doesn't have that deep ball. I think they thought they could just keep dialing up some explosives here and there, and they'd be able to get to it. And just not seeing a lot of attempts. I think the trust in that deep ball has not been there the same way either. So yeah, it's a tricky thing. It's what leads to a day like today where they just, their longest play, they did not have a play of 25 yards today. They had two catches, two different 22-yard plays, and that was the only ones over 20. So
4 explosive plays total, 2 passes, 2 runs.
Yeah, that's
not good.
That's tough.
And all of them were on the low end of the explosive play threshold. So it's 22-yard passes. An explosive play is 20 yards or more for a pass. Explosive play is a run of 10 or more. The runs were 13 and 12.
Yeah, not scintillating.
That's it for the Colts Cover-2 podcast. We are going to get some sleep, and then we'll be back to see whatever comes out of tomorrow.